daily dose of practical wit and wisdom with a professional educator and trainer, Amazon best-selling author, United States Marine, television and radio host, Paul G. Markel. Each episode will focus on positive and productive ways to strengthen your mindset and help you improve your relationships, career goals, and overall well-being. Please welcome your host, Paul G. Markel.
Hey, welcome to Morning Mindset. This is your host, Paul Markel. And of course, you already know that because you heard the introduction, but thank you anyway. And I truly appreciate you joining me today for this show. Today's topic. This may, I don't know if it's going to hurt your feelings, but it may bring up hurtful feelings or feelings of anxiety or what have you. But we are going to talk about rebuilding bridges, and that is repairing strained and fractured relationships. Now, you might be thinking that I'm talking about men and women and husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends and so forth, but it could be any kind of a relationship, quite frankly. It could be a friendship. It could be a previously romantic relationship. It could be a relationship between you and a family member, such as aunts and uncles and cousins and so on and so forth. Maybe your mother or father, maybe your kids, but it could be a business relationship. And that's business relationships often become strained and fractured, and sometimes the bridges get burned. And if you're going to be a mature adult, if you're going to grow as a human being, every once in a while, you need to take the time to consider whether or not it's time to attempt to rebuild a bridge or to repair a fractured relationship. All right. Well, I have a personal story for you, and it's a business relationship story. I've been writing professionally for over 25 years now, and I have a lot of professional contacts in my field of endeavor, which is the outdoor shooting sports, law enforcement, military community. And when I started writing and became a very active writer, I had many relationships with manufacturers and people who made products for like-minded individuals. Like I said, the outdoor shooting sports, law enforcement, military type world. And what I found is as my career grew and then changed, my business relationships would change. For instance, when I was writing very actively for outdoor shooting sports magazines, at one point in time, I was having somewhere between 40 and 50 articles per year published. So I was generating what in the industry we would call a lot of ink. And when I started generating a lot of ink, I had people who, would call me up, or they would send me emails, or they would send me notes, or I would see them at shows and they're like, "Oh, hey, Paul, did you hear that we're doing this? And would you be interested in talking about this or specifically writing about this, taking pictures of this?" Because when I started writing, I also became my own photographer and took thousands upon thousands of pictures and so forth. Well, things changed a little bit, and I went off on my own and developed my own television channel and my own radio show. And so I was no longer working for the normal publishing houses. And what I found was some of the people that wanted to be my best friend or wanted to be good friends with me when I was generating a lot of ink for various publishing houses, when I was doing it on my own and things had changed, weren't so interested in being my friends anymore. And it was, at the time, it was kind of, I don't know if it was depressing, but it made me kind of sad to realize that there were a good number of people in the industry that I thought were friends, but they weren't really friends. They were more acquaintances, and they were interested in being my friend and acquaintance as long as I could get them a whole bunch of, like I said, in the industry, we would call free ink. If I could give them free ink or free public relations and PR, they were all about being my friend. But when the things changed and I needed them to support me in my new project, they weren't so interested anymore. And that's something that when you examine a relationship, maybe you have a relationship that was strained, fractured, broken, the bridge was seriously burned, one of the big questions that you need to ask yourself was that relationship a mutually beneficial relationship to both parties, or was one of the parties getting more out of the relationship than the other? Was respect reciprocal? I know it's a lot of R's and C's and S's right there, but was the respect reciprocal or largely one-sided? Were you doing most of or all of the work in the relationship? Were you investing the lion's share of energy into whatever that relationship had to be? And like I said, this could be a romantic relationship, a personal relationship, a business relationship. And before you decide, all right, it's time to repair that broken relationship, you really need to assess, and you say, well, maybe the reason that person and I are no longer friends, or maybe the reason that person and I no longer work together or have a business relationship is because I was putting in all of the work, the time, and the effort. And as soon as it became time for them to put in work, time, effort, as soon as it became time for that person to invest in the relationship, they no longer wanted to be involved in it. Okay. So that may not be a relationship that's actually worth repairing. This is, it goes back to that whole gut check time. Honest self-assessment. Now, you may find when you do the honest self-assessment that the relationship that you had that is now broken or strained it was broken or strained because of ego, because of either your ego or someone else's ego, or a product of the two. Maybe your ego took you in one direction and their ego took them in another direction. It could be there was some animosity or some anger there. Now, remember, anger is not a sin, as we discussed previously, but it is also not a strategy. Being angry all the time or being angry at someone is it's not a successful relationship or business strategy. So once you get to that self-assessment, and the reason that I'm talking about this right now is because I've just returned from a trade show, from a convention, and I saw a lot of people there who I've known some of them for upwards and over 20, going on 25 years. Matter of fact, there were some people very few, but a few people that I've known for going on 30 years. And when you go to these shows, especially if they're annual shows, you see people, you run into acquaintances and friends, and you see people that you may have once had a really good, productive relationship with. And you realize, you think to yourself, we haven't done business together, we haven't talked, we haven't communicated for a year or 2 or 3 or however long it's been. And that's a good time to ask yourself, real quickly, why is that? Am I not exchanging emails or phone calls or text messages with this person just because I'm really busy, they're really busy? Or was there some type of a strain or a fracture put on that relationship? And if the relationship was beneficial to both parties, and you might want to take a second to say, did my own personal ego damage that relationship? And again, going back to honest self-assessment and growth, you may come up with that gut check answer that, yeah, it might have been my ego that got in the way of that relationship. Or you might say, if you're honest and you can look in the mirror and say, no, it wasn't my ego at all. It was the fact that that person they no longer wanted to put time and investment into the relationship. But there is time, if we're going to be mature, responsible, growing adults, that we need to examine these relationships and decide whether or not they can be salvaged. And if they can, that's probably one of the hardest things for people to do, because going back and attempting to rebuild a bridge may require you to park some ego. It may require you to humble yourself and to approach that person, whoever they may be, and say, you know what? I think things kind of got off track. You and I were very close before. We had a good working relationship. We had a good personal relationship. And now we don't. What can I do to help rebuild our relationship? Don't tell them what they need to do to rebuild it. Ask them what you can do to rebuild it. Now, there may be nothing, but let's face facts. There are some relationships out there, if you're honest with yourself, that you think about. You might say, you know what? The reason that it didn't work or it's not working is because I let my personal feelings and my ego get in the way. I hope that there may be a chance that you can salvage one fractured or strained relationship, that you might actually be able to build a bridge that you set fire to many moons ago. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, go out there, see if you can rebuild at least one bridge. This is me, Paul Markel, reminding you that all of my books, if you're interested in learning more, all of my books are available on Amazon as paperbacks, or you can get them on the Kindle app as Kindle versions. How cool is that? I know a lot of you guys like Kindles. Thank you to everyone who has left a review of this on your favorite podcast player, whatever that happens to be, and who has shared it. And if you haven't shared it yet, why not? Don't be greedy, man. You know there's at least one person in your life that could use this information. All right, folks, I'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for spending time with us today. To get show notes, submit a topic request, and for more from your host, Paul G. Markel, visit morningmindsetpodcast.com. That's morningmindsetpodcast.com. Please leave a review for this podcast on your favorite podcast player. We appreciate your time and effort, and we look forward to reading your honest feedback.